Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 7, the season finale. Another brutal episode in a show that's getting increasingly hard for me to watch, but hey, if Season 3 means we get to refocus on Caitlin Deaver's Abby, I'm ready for more. But let's go through this Season 2 finale episode scene by scene for all the details you missed. The episode opens with the stolen wolf radio that Dina got from the TV station, and the map that Dina drew in Episode 5 showing the opening in the wolf patrol line, and a flyer for what looks like the Pinnacle Theater where they are staying, plus Dina's notes on the wolf movements that she recorded. Over this radio during a thunderstorm, we hear this exchange.
Yeah, over Jimmy King. Tell your division we're going silent. Isaac's orders. Call your boats back. Radio silent.
This goes unheard for now because Dina's leg is wounded by the Seraphite arrow. But it is critical information because Isaac is planning an invasion by water of Seraphite territory on their island, like the Allied D-Day invasion at Normandy or Washington crossing the Delaware at the Battle of Trenton. And Isaac is now demanding radio silence, a change from how openly the wolves talked over the radio back in Episode 5, which means they are now suspecting that new radio listeners have entered their territory. And that might explain partly how Abby was able to triangulate their position. In general, the fact that the best logistics thinker of their group, Dina, isn't listening to wolf radio as she deals with this injury is a very worrying sign for this episode because it kind of explains why no one is tracking any WLF movements or even any WLF radio silences to just get the idea to relocate the hell away from this theater. But also, you know, Dina's wounded. They can't really move her through the rain, so you can forgive them for that. But the arrow that Dina got hit with back in Episode 5 was a metal bolt from a Seraphite crossbow, and Jesse knows they have to push it through, not pull it out. I've mentioned before how writer Craig Mazin, in a past episode of his Script Notes screenwriting podcast with John August, has talked about how a pet peeve of his in screenwriting is when characters get impaled with something and then yank it out, which is something you should never do. And I sense some of that logic playing out in this scene. Jesse says he knows where the arteries are, and pulling out the arrow could nick a critical artery. The idea of fatal arteries being cut like this comes into play with Mel in the later scene. Just a bullet grazing her in the wrong part of her neck causes her to bleed out fatally. Dina says Jesse can't let her die, a word choice Jesse picks up on, bringing it up in the later scene, along with Dina's general irregular panic. Dina fears death to a greater degree now because she is pregnant. Jesse pours liquor on the arrow shaft to sanitize it and offers Dina some.
No. Have some, okay?
No.
It's gonna help. Have some.
I said no.
Jesse also clocks that this is Dina, who in the season 2 premiere also had no problem being super drunk at the dance, so there's only one reason she would refuse alcohol. But I also appreciate how this reflects Dina's limited sex education, particularly from a world that froze in 2003, because yeah, pregnant women should not drink liquor, but you know, one shot of it, one time in an extreme instance such as this, is probably not going to harm the fetus. Going into shock from extreme pain could. I don't know, some of you are gonna be like, oh, look at this man telling pregnant women they actually can drink. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that OBGYNs give the guidance they give because they know habitual drinkers might take a mile when they're given an inch. So they just say, don't drink. But yes, we are opening an episode with an injured pregnant woman panicking over the health of their child, really to set us up for the tragic moment that comes later this episode. Ellie returns to the Pinnacle Theater after torturing Nora in the hospital, and Jesse tests her by asking the name of her horse, Shimmer. We'll see later this episode how he guilts Ellie for kind of forgetting about Shimmer. Jesse also senses from Ellie's urgency to find Dina that there must be something going on between the two of them. In the dressing room, there's one light bulb that's out. I guess natural gas, baby, doesn't work if the filament's fried.
Natural gas, baby.
And we see writing on the walls from past bands who have played at this venue. Thanks, Seattle. And then something else from TX, which is either a band from Texas or maybe Thoughts 20, the fictional band from the game. We also see a Van Morrison poster, Girls Rule by the Tulips, a Green Day poster, Feral Pit, which is another band from the world of the game, and we see Slipknot written on the wall. Ellie asks if the baby is okay, and Dina nods.
How do you know? I just do.
Yes, another setup for the heartbreaking Mel moment later. There's just, you know, a special link between the mother and the baby in the womb. Dina cleans Ellie's scrapes on her back. In the game, upon Ellie waking up in the Seattle Day 3 chapter, Ellie does sit up in bed and you see how messed up her back is. The idea being that all the brushes she's had with the infected, the wolves, the Seraphites, and other surfaces and fences and branches she scraped past to escape them have just left their mark. Though I will say, in the show, I don't think we've seen the live action Ellie get roughed up that much in Seattle, at least not enough to get these types of wounds. Ellie says she found Nora and made her talk, getting out of her that Abby was somewhere related to a whale and wheel.
She was infected. It was already setting in.
Dina is learning that Ellie was with Nora long enough for Nora's infection to take over, which means at least a half hour going by Eugene math of episode 6. There's also something interesting about the cordyceps freeing one's mind of any deception and forcing the truth out in these broken forms. While Ellie recounts her torturing Nora, she seems numb as she says she thought it would be harder to do, but it wasn't. It was easy. There is a parallel here between Ellie immediately telling Dina the awful thing she did versus Joel hiding his dark crimes of passion until they were forced out of him. Like Ellie in the scene seems scared how easy it was for her. Dina asks if Ellie killed Nora.
No, I left her.
Meaning instead of killing Nora quickly, she left her to rot in that cordyceps tomb, just like Elise Park's son.
Yeah, well, maybe she got what she deserved. Maybe she did.
And it's just interesting that Ellie is saying all of this while she's facing her own reflection in the mirror, her own naked, vulnerable self. Ellie tells Dina what Joel did to save her in Salt Lake City. And we never see Ellie tell Dina this in the game. There was a journal entry where she considers telling Dina and Jesse, writing, "They won't understand, do I understand?" But we never actually see the conversation. There is, though, later on a time jump where it could have happened. It's just interesting that the show makes this choice. I think the show added this really to saddle Ellie with some personal guilt ahead of what is coming, and for the actors here to convey that discomfort that their vengeance quest isn't quite as righteous as they have made it out to be. We're now in Seattle day 3 on the show, and we see the Pinnacle Theater from the other side, where we can piece together from the missing letters on the marquee to see that Sick Habit, the band from the game, was playing at the Pinnacle Theater from September 16th to September 20-something, as Outbreak Day was September 26, 2003. As Ellie and Jesse gear up, Ellie listens to the WLF radio and hears only static, not realizing that Isaac ordered the wolves to go radio silent the night before. Dina gives Ellie a bracelet for good luck, just as she has a bracelet in the game, and also in the game it bears the Hamsa symbol. That's the open palm with the eye, known as the Hand of Fatima, that dates back to ancient Mesopotamia. This symbol is known for warding off evil spirits, but Dina puts it on Ellie's other wrist because that arm is the arm with her cordyceps scarring, the burn scar, the tattoo over it, and it was the arm that Ellie used to take the bite to shield Dina from harm in episode 4. Ellie doubts the bracelet is lucky.
Not sure it's been working for you. I'm alive.
Based on Ellie's miraculous survival in the wave and the Seraphites trying to execute her, there does seem to be some luck to this thing, though one could argue that Ellie is really the bringer of evil in this story. Jesse tells Ellie that they found them by following the likeliest path through the city, seeing the WLF sign on the KMAB station, and then using that to create a 2-mile radius and searching every building within that. Ellie says he makes it sound easy, and yeah, it is easy enough for anyone looking for them, like Abby, to use the same method to find them. Jesse bluffs with Ellie, saying that he's connected the dots on Dina being pregnant, and when Ellie confirms it, Jesse really takes it in and now insists that they have to go back to Jackson, as Ellie and Jesse talk about at this point in the game, though Ellie never really seriously considers going back to Jackson. They pass a new Feel Her Love mural depicting the prophet, but as Ellie notes, it's a different woman.
There's more than one of her?
This seems to be a new bit of lore backstory about the prophet and the Seraphites beyond what is in the game. Rather than it being one singular woman who is the prophet, there is either a kind of coven of multiple women who played that role, or maybe they had various decoy prophets knowing that the wolves were targeting them, or maybe the prophet is just such a mythologized figure that her very appearance is apocryphal, the way there has been some art displaying Jesus Christ has multiple races, or in Severance, Keir Egan has multiple races. Similarly, there was Isaac's line to Malcolm during his torture session, asking if he even met the prophet. I assume this series will dig into these interesting mysteries in season 3. They take a break from the rain on the way to the bookstore, stopping in a garage where some wolves chase down a Seraphite. One of these wolves is Burton, the former Fedra soldier that Isaac spared in season 2 episode 4, who later became a very, very violent loyalist. The Seraphite says,
The world is not in balance, but I have done my part to right it. She has let me through this storm. Now I must rest.
This is the prophet's prayer from the game, which in the game goes as follows: "The world is not in balance, but I have done my part to right it. You have led me through the storm. Now I must rest. May the current be calm. May you guide me home." Ellie wants to intervene and save this young Scar, but Jesse holds her back.
I am not dying out here.
Yeah, they really telegraph Jesse's death throughout this episode. We see the wolf camp in a Costco parking lot. There's some practical brilliance to this because when the world went to shit, whoever took control of a Costco and fortified it fastest would basically own the area just from the variety and amount of inventory. When Elise Park pulls up, it looks like the truck in front of her are loading some wrapped up bodies, I assume some Seraphites whom Isaac tortured to get information. Elise Park, who was that WLF officer Hanrahan met with, who let her son stay entombed, infected in the hospital basement, gives Isaac a weather report, and she references Melissa and Christy, Abby. Melissa is the name of an unseen wolf character you find mentioned in a letter in the game. But yes, basically the convergence of the storm is what Isaac was waiting for. He wants to use this storm as cover to attack the Seraphite Island. On his desk, Isaac has a bottle of Johnny Walker Black. Maybe it's the blue label though, hard to tell. I think he's drinking this because he knows tonight's invasion could be his last day. Elise reports that the officers are ready, but the rank and file are a little scared. And she reports that in addition to Abby, Owen and Mel are missing too. Isaac says that while Manny didn't leave with them, they have an army full of Mannys and plenty of Owens and Mels too, but only one Abby. Elise says,
"You in love with her or something?"
It's a fair question to ask. Remember, Gail hinted at something similar in her questioning of Joel and his relationship with Ellie back in the season premiere. But for Isaac, his focus on Abby is really in Abby's steadfast leadership qualities and what he thinks is her ability to keep up the forever war against the Seraphites, to never give in to their cult ideology. But again, that is just Isaac's assumption about Abby. We don't learn in this episode why Abby, Owen, and Mel are AWOL, but I'll talk about this more in the spoilers section. Jesse and Ellie make it to the bookstore. On the wall, there's a sign in the children's section, "Everything's got a moral if only you can find it." This is a quote spoken by the Duchess in Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. It's something Ellie should think about because she feels that after Joel deprived her life of having a purpose, she no longer really has a purpose, and now really no other purpose than avenging Joel. But vengeance in and of itself is not enough of a purpose in life, and all Ellie needs to do is just open one of the books around her, flip to any page, and she'll probably find a better meaning than the one she's chasing. Ellie goes to the section where you can read to Pepe with a bunch of baby books. As a parent to a 17-month-old, I've read many of these to my kid. We can see Love You Forever, the 1986 book where a mother sings this lullaby to her baby son as he grows up into a man until she's too old and tired to sing it. So he sings it to her, carrying her to bed, and then to his own daughter. The symbolic passing of torch that we saw last episode from Joel to Ellie, who is soon to be a parental figure herself. We see A Piece of Home from 1996 about a boy who moves from Russia to America. He can only bring one sentimental item, so he chooses his baby blanket, a patchwork quilt. This author was a Holocaust survivor, and this book is about kids dealing with life upending moves and all the anxieties that come with that. We see Is Your Mama a Llama, the 1989 book where a baby llama learns about how his friends' moms are all different than his mom. We see I Spy. There are actually a ton of books like this, a series of picture books designed to help kids search for things. And the one that Ellie picks up is The Monster at the End of This Book. It's where Grover hears that there's a monster at the end of the book and is terrified of the reader turning the pages because he doesn't want to face that monster. In the end, he realizes that he is, in fact, the monster. Parallels here are obvious with Ellie picking this up because they're so focused on the infected that they don't really realize that she, the human, are capable of even more monstrous behavior. She is the monster. Obviously, Ellie's picking out a baby book as a gift for Dina, and Jesse compliments her idea, wishing he had thought of it. Behind Jesse is the Lewis Carroll quote that we mentioned before. Now we see a mural with a big old mushroom from Carroll's writings and various mushroom statues, which is just a fun parallel to this world being overtaken by fungi. There's a similar mural in the game. Jesse tells Ellie about a group from Alberta who stopped by Jackson with a girl who was a few years older than he was, who he fell in love with for a couple weeks, but he let it go because he cares about the community more than his own love. But really, he knows what love looks like between two people. But their conversation's interrupted by a WLF radio broadcast that they're under fire at the South Lake Marina. Not a Seraphite, but a sniper. So that must mean Tommy. As Jesse and Ellie run away, we see a stuffed giraffe on the bench. Giraffes are the recurring visual, the sweet animals Joel and Ellie fed outside St. Mary's, the same gentle giants who graze the background by the Firefly graves in this season's opening scene. I also think we saw a stuffed giraffe in the dirt in Boston in season 1, episode 2, and there was definitely a giraffe on the wallpaper in the pediatric wing of St. Mary's in the season 1 finale. I don't know, I just think they're kind of a symbol of the love shared between the characters, but also love that isn't meant to last forever. Jesse and Ellie look out from an opening in the building at the city horizon, and Ellie sees the Ferris wheel and the whale on the aquarium in the distance. The wheel and the whale. Now, this is Seattle's Great Wheel on Miners Landing, Pier 57 in Elliott Bay. This Ferris wheel opened in 2012. So if the world froze in 2003, the wheel wouldn't have been there. So it is an anachronism. But in the game, the world went to shit in 2013. Not an anachronism in the game, but it is a cool looking landmark either way. I'm glad we got to see it. We do see this moment in the game where she sees a similar thing, but in the game, Ellie knows that she's looking for an aquarium and there isn't this wheel in the whale cryptic treasure hunt stuff. Watching The Last of Us makes you think, what if your life suddenly changed? What if you had to start over, build a new path from scratch? And while we thankfully don't have to live in a post-apocalyptic fungus world, feeling stuck in your job can feel just as hopeless. If you've been wondering whether there's something better out there, there's a great way to start. Take a free career quiz from today's sponsor, Triple 10. It only takes a few minutes and helps you figure out which career in tech could be the right fit for you based on your strengths, interests, and goals. Triple 10 offers beginner-friendly online boot camps with one of the highest graduation and employment rates in the industry. 82% of Triple 10 graduates get hired in 6 months or less, with a median salary of $70,000. Plus, they have a 100% money-back guarantee if you don't find the job, so there's no risk. So if your current path isn't working, maybe it's time to explore a new one. Scan the QR code or find the link in the description. Give it a shot. You might be surprised where it leads. Jesse reveals to Ellie that he voted no in the Jackson Council vote to send a bigger brigade out with Ellie to avenge Joel.
It wasn't in the best interest of the community.
Fuck the community!
This type of me versus the community thinking is why I've argued that the cordyceps might be the better moral choice for this planet than the humanity, at least of this series at this point. The fungi instinctively work better collectively. This whole debate plays out with the ruins of Seattle behind them and various capsized tankers and boats in the harbor. Ellie then turns it on Jesse for not saving the Seraphite because he wasn't in his community. Craig Mazin has said that the themes of this season are us versus them, the kind of tribal instinct and when it's okay to draw those lines and where we draw them. And I like how we're seeing that play out here. As Jesse says to Ellie in the game, he leaves her with,
I really hope you make it.
I really hope you make it.
Then we go into a kind of tonight from West Side Story montage where we see several characters preparing for the night ahead. Dina watching the barricaded door, Isaac shaving. We see the stormy harbor from the point of view of the creaking pod of the Ferris wheel. And then Ellie approaches the dock to get a boat, but stops when some wolves are headed out to the boat. Foolishly, she raises her gun to them, but then, one light, then 3 lights, then multiple lights. Isaac's whole fleet as they load up with more weaponry and explosives as they make their way out to the Seraphite Island. And as they depart the dock, lights off. This is gonna be a surprise attack. Ellie takes another motorboat and heads out into the storm toward the pier. Now in the game, you do have to pilot a boat as Ellie, first out of a flooded street and then out into the bay. But when the engine breaks down, you have to crank start it and then a wave capsizes the boat. And you kind of have to remember Joel's instructions on how to swim from the birthday memory to make it out to a sandbar. And then you make your way onto the spooky ruined pier with its creepy carnival rides toward the aquarium. But here they add something. Ellie does what you should not do when seeing a big wave coming your way. She banks right, which makes it even easier for a wave to capsize you. You should just steer directly into the wave and just pray to God that you make it through. In this case, the wave pushes Ellie toward a different shore, the island where Isaac's fleet was headed. When she looks up, whoa, creepy little girl who reminds us of a younger Ellie, or like the young Seraphite girl that we saw in past episodes. Can you trust these girls? They're part of the cult too. We hear a Seraphite whistle. This is the enemy ambush call of the Seraphite's whistle code. We hear a few more whistles that don't sound like they're from the game or specific ones, but then Ellie sees the noose. And after witnessing that execution ceremony back in episode 5, she knows what this means. After telling Jesse that they should have spared a Seraphite kid, now a Seraphite kid seals her fate by saying, "Out with her guts!" And Ellie nearly dies on this noose, but then
the village.
The Seraphite village comes under attack and they leave her behind. This whole side of the story is not in the game, at least not at this point. At first I wasn't sure why they included it here in the episode. I think it was just to give Ellie a brush with death from a group who will have a much bigger role next season. As Ellie looks behind, she sees massive explosions from the WLF bombs going off back on the island. Ellie makes it to the aquarium and enters through a broken skylight. Inside we see a mug with the same pattern as the mug Isaac had on his table earlier. So we know that there are wolves here. Ellie passes a makeshift operating table with bloody rags and tools. More on what these are about in the spoilers section, but the way we focus on Ellie's boots as she walks down the hall with thunder and lightning, it's really like she's the serial killer approaching the heroes of this story. She passes under some paper mache jellyfish. A younger version of Ellie loved being in a museum and marveling at the animals. Now she has no time for them. As Ellie approaches, we hear Owen and Mel arguing.
So don't make this out like I'm being some kind of worthless bitch. I'm not. And let's be honest, this isn't about them anyways, Owen. You're talking about being behind enemy lines alone at night. This is suicide under normal circumstances, and you want to do this now? Do you even understand what's going on?
I understand everything, but I don't have a choice, do I? It's Abby.
In the game, you also hear them arguing, and you similarly don't really know what it's about.
People don't come back from that island.
How many times has Abby risked her life for you?
She chose this. I'm not fucking going there.
Again, more on this in spoilers, but Ellie points a gun at them and Owen immediately recognizes her as a girl from Jackson, saying he's the one who left her alive. And as she does in the game, Ellie tells them both to point at Abby on the map separately and that where they point to better match. Now in the game, this leads to a scuffle where Owen goes for the gun, Ellie shoots him first, but then Ellie wrestles with Mel and stabs her into the neck and then goes back to Owen and stabs him in the neck as she questions him. And he says something about Mel, saying she's, and then Ellie goes back to Mel and realizes Mel is pregnant. In the show, it goes down even faster. Ellie shoots Owen, who's standing directly in front of Mel. Ellie doesn't realize he's protecting Mel, and it's because he stands in front of her and because the floodlights are behind them, Ellie's just kind of blinded by Mel's general shape. And then bang, the bullet goes through Owen's neck and we see the bullet hole in the wall. Mel turns and fuck. The wrong quarter inch has been nicked. It's the jugular. But the biggest difference from the game is how Mel's pregnancy is revealed and what Mel does next.
Knife?
Do you have a knife? I only have 30 seconds. You're gonna take it out. You're one incision. That's all it is. And then be sure to tie the cord.
Damn. The knife that Ellie has is her mother's switchblade, the knife that Anna used to cut her umbilical cord with Ellie, and the knife that she held to her own throat as she waited for Marlene. The fact that Mel, as a doctor, goes right into surgical instruction and keeps a calm bedside manner despite what Ellie just did to her and to Owen, even after Ellie finds herself unable to do it. It's just amazing that Mel is still in that mode, telling her to cut low transverse, forgetting that she's not talking to another doctor, and then fading away, unable to feel anything, she whispers this.
You're doing good. Is it out? Is it out?
I gotta be honest, folks, it was hard for me to watch this, and I'm not crazy about the choice to put even the thought of a bloody cesarean section in our heads and what's already a devastating enough context. In the game, seeing the baby bump is tragic enough, and Ellie goes into an audio-numbing state of shock, hearing the same ringing in her ears as what she heard when she watched Joel die. Look, Ariella Bearer gives a hell of a performance in this changed version of the scene in the show, and I do like the callback to Ellie's own birth, particularly in a shot of Ellie framed over a baby bump, and the idea that Anna's knife is brought back in this moment. And I gotta say, after violent cesarean sections were carried out in The Walking Dead and House of the Dragon, not actually going through with it here, I think is a step in the right direction. I just, kind of feel like the version in the game went as far as it needed to. But the camera shows Mel's blood dripping into the drain, similar to the way Owen and Mel's blood pools in the aquarium floor in the game. Now in the game, Tommy and Jesse find Ellie pretty much right after it happens, but here it seems as though Ellie has gone through several minutes where Ellie has had some time to mourn Mel and really think about what she did. I suppose another possible upside to the change, I'll admit, is that it makes Ellie's killing of Mel feel more accidental, and she spends more time regretting it. Afterwards, back at the Pinnacle Theater, as they plan to return to Jackson, they talk more about what just happened, just like in the game, but here Tommy goes a bit easier on Ellie.
They were part of it too. They made their choices. That's all there is to it.
But this scene ends similarly, with Ellie being mad that Abby gets to live, and for a moment making her peace with that, but that peace doesn't last long. Jesse tells Ellie why he came back to save her.
You set the world on fire to save me.
This being the last thing Jesse says to her is why Ellie is never going to be able to step away from the path of vengeance when this happens. Jesse doesn't have a second to react when he goes through the door. So Abby has found them. She's holding Tommy at gunpoint. This scene plays out pretty similarly to the game, and Caitlin Deaver crushes it.
I let you live. And you wasted it.
We let you both live.
And you wasted it.
The difference here, though, is that the show adds a gunshot sound effect on the cut to black.
And you wasted it. Oh, no!
So did Abby shoot Ellie? Did something else happen? We'll have to wait to see, because now we flash back to a certain amount of time earlier to Abby's Seattle day one. Abby wakes up from a nap, having fallen asleep reading Thieves of the City, just like she does in the game. Neil Druckmann took inspiration for this fake book from City of Thieves, a real book written by Game of Thrones co-creator David Benioff. And Neil Druckmann said that that was an inspiration for the Last of Us game. And I love this detail here in the scene in the show. The author on this book is a play on David Benioff's name, Ben Davidoff. David Benioff is also a personal friend of Craig Mazin. Abby looks out over the Wolves HQ and Seahawks Stadium, which is now known in our world as Lumen Field. In 2003, though, it was just Seahawks Stadium. Rows of plants are being farmed. We see greenhouses, wind turbines, a WLF banner hangs. One could say it's kind of a utopia. So what happened between then and now when Isaac is holed up in a Costco? Is that Costco just another one of their bases? Or between then and now, did the Seraphites attack this stadium home, perhaps overrun it with infected? We're gonna see in season 3, because it is now no longer a spoiler to say that at this point in the game, you switch to play as Abby for a period of time. It was part of Neil Druckmann's narrative experiment to force the viewer into a very difficult empathy shift, to play as the character who killed our beloved Joel, but only after you start to see Ellie as more and more of a villain, who arguably has done a lot worse things than Abby has done at that point. The closing music is Soundgarden's 1996 song, Burden in My Hand. And that brings us to our final section here, our spoilers section. If you have not played the game and don't want to know some of the reveals that happened on the Abby side of this, stop watching now. So why did Abby go missing with Owen and Mel on the day of Isaac's invasion? What were Owen and Mel arguing about? Well, in the game, Abby had found and befriended a Seraphite brother and sister, Lev and Yara, and she brought Lev to Mel to amputate Lev's arm to save his life. That's what those bloody rags and surgical tools are when Ellie passes them in the aquarium. And now Owen wants to rush to the island to get Abby before Isaac's invasion in order to save Abby. But Mel wants to let Abby die because she suspects that Owen slept with Abby, which he did. Oh, did he? So that's what they're arguing about here, whether or not to go save Abby. And we're gonna see that context play out in season 3. It's just interesting to hear the heroes arguing about it from the point of view of what you could say is a villain of the show. But really, we should say at this point, there are no heroes, there are no villains of the show. We are just trapped in a perpetual cycle of violence, and no one is good. And the reason Abby has been hard for everyone to find is that she is doing a good thing. She's crossing the lines to help some Seraphites. It's something Ellie wanted Jesse to do. Take pity on these scars. Now this episode adds the context that Isaac thinks Abby fled with her Jackson crew on the day of his invasion plans, but in the game it was just some kind of coincidental scattering of the characters, that Abby was just doing something else with Yara and Lev. But the reason Owen is AWOL to begin with is that he was in a situation where he had to kill a Seraphite kid but killed his WLF partner instead. I assume we're gonna see that as well. So why do they add the gunshot sound effect on a blackout with Abby? Well, in the game, Abby does not shoot Ellie in this moment, but she does shoot down at Tommy, and Ellie thinks Tommy is dead, but he just loses an eye as the bullet grazes part of his head. So I think they have this misdirect here just to kind of leave us in a state of shock that we won't know what happened. But we will find out in, I guess, another 2 years when this next season comes back. And it's gonna be an Abby season. Catherine O'Hara confirmed it, and I'm really excited to see Caitlin Dever step into the position of being the star of this show. I guess my question for you is, do you think they're gonna take a break from Bella Ramsey at this point? Will we see some scenes of Ellie? Might they recast Ellie? Probably not, because we're gonna see Ellie at the same age as these two characters collide. But I know there's a big conversation about this, and it's kind of hard to do it without being disrespectful. So, if you do have thoughts on the casting, just try to be polite and respectful, please. Either way, I want to know your thoughts on this season. I think it's possible to not like the season for reasons that are completely valid, from Craig Mazin's decision to structure it the way he did, some of the writing between the characters, the decision to shorten it to just 7 episodes when we could have gone further into the game and explored more of Abby's arc within this season. I mean, it's The Last of Us. HBO needs a prestige drama. They could have gotten as big of a budget as they wanted and done 13 episodes. Why did they limit it to 7? Why did they pour so much budget into having a massive Jackson battle rather than just distribute that budget to other moments throughout the series? Did they really just bow to the pressure from HBO to have a big hard home moment that early in the season? Wouldn't that episode have been gripping and game changing enough without the big battle? Or hey, maybe I'm just feeling grumpy because out of a 7-episode season, the final 2 episodes of the season didn't have any infected in it at all. I don't know, comment down below with your thoughts, and a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Smokey Da Bear, who supports us at the executive producer level. Follow me at Erik Voss and subscribe to all 3 channels of the new Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.